Before we get into the video, I wanted to share a special tool that David and I have been using for over 2 years to manage our inventory on Amazon. The tool is called SoStocked, and it is a very powerful tool. It's designed specifically for inventory management. If you're in a physical products business selling on Amazon, you need to be in stock, especially with the inventory restrictions lately. This tool is incredibly powerful. If you're having trouble with inventory management, this might be a tool to help you. SoStocked is partnered with Firing Demand, and they've offered our guests, our listeners, a 30-day free trial. So click the link in the video description to get 30-day free trial. On to the video.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. Today, we have the pleasure to interview Adrian Knight. Adrian is an accomplished acquisition entrepreneur, adventurer, and endurance athlete. Adrian buys and sells businesses for a living and has used his acquisition skills to build a multi-million-dollar children's education group from the ground up in less than 3 years. Today, Adrian leaves the running of his children's education group to others while he spends his time working on his own personal growth and mindset, which he undoubtedly recognizes as the secret sauce to his business and endurance success to date. Very excited to have Adrian on the show. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you so much. I'm equally as excited to be here.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you please share with our listeners a little bit about your background and your path to becoming an acquisition entrepreneur?
For those who aren't quite aware of what an acquisition entrepreneur is, it's buying, building value, and selling businesses in a nutshell. It's those three areas. But prior to getting into this, I was a startup entrepreneur, and a very bad one at that, if I must say. I had 12 failed startups that I went through over a period of, it was around 12 years, so 1 a year. And I was just fed up of hitting myself, like hitting my head against the wall, and realised I needed to try something different, which is how I got onto the path of buying businesses. And yeah, I made my first acquisition within 3 months of heading down that path and haven't looked back.
Awesome. And so I want to dive into that a little bit. You said 12 startups in 12 years. And so that tells me two things. One, you don't give up. And two, you know how to pivot it and try. And so can you share with the audience some of the lessons that you learned along the way that ultimately led you to success?
Absolutely. So one of the big things in hindsight that I can see that contributed to those failures was I wasn't playing to my strengths. So I would sort of brand myself as like quite entrepreneurial, have a vision. I can get people bought into that vision. I can give quite a bit of gusto to, rah everyone up and to get things moving. But that only takes you so far. And for me, the same hurdle I kept coming across was as things started to become far more operational. There was many more moving parts, and that needed orchestrating and systems and processes, and that was where I was falling short, and which is eventually what led to these failures. But what's been so interesting for me personally, as I've gone into the world of buying, building value, and selling businesses, is that skill set that entrepreneurial skill set has served me really well in this world of buying and selling businesses. Because when you go into a business, an established business, all of the logistics, all of the moving parts are already in place, but there's normally a couple of problems. And so those problems need to be dealt with. And to do that, you have to instigate change. And so you need a bit of vision, you need a bit of rah-rah, you need to rally the right people into the right places. And that has worked really well for me, and is probably the main thing I look for when buying businesses now. I look for those opportunities that are going to align really nicely to my skill set.
One other follow-up question, and then I'll throw it to David because I know he's got some questions. You had mentioned you're an endurance athlete. Are you a runner or a cyclist, or what do you do for endurance?
All of the above. So I started off with running. That then moved into triathlons, and I worked my way up through triathlons, and I've done an Ironman. Then, not wanting to continue doing the same things, I started to look for other type of endurance activities. So I've been very fortunate to visit the Arctic Circle last year. I've ran across northern England last year as well. 6 weeks today, I fly fly to Panama for a coast-to-coast adventure, 2-week adventure where we're going 5 days completely unsupported through the jungle. And so, just all of the above, really. I found myself doing activities I would never sort of think I would do, but absolutely loving it.
Yeah, that's fascinating because in my mind, you had said, I'd had 12 startups that failed. I would like to call them like lessons learned, because each one you probably learned something and then took it to the next one. And so what kept you motivated, or what kept you going to do that 12 times? Is it just your mindset? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, fundamentally, it was knowing that I didn't want to work for the man, funnily enough. I always knew when I was growing up, I never knew what I wanted to be, but I could never see myself working in that sort of typical like 9 to 5. I never saw myself doing that. And I always felt that I had a place in business. And so with each of these startups, I was learning stuff. I was accumulating lessons. I was learning the importance of business models and how a business functions. I just wasn't able to bring it to life in my own way. But when a startup inevitably failed, it was soul destroying every single time. And every single time I had a conversation with myself saying, what are you going to do now? And my family were very worried. Friends couldn't understand what I was doing. Why don't you just get a job? You're more than capable as a person. But in my heart, I just knew that wasn't me. I knew that wasn't the path that I needed to take. And the mindset I always had at that time, I mean, my dad genuinely thought I was losing the plot, but I was like, this is just building the foundation. Like every setback was building that character. Every setback was building the foundation. And I knew that all of those experiences would someday have a meaning to it. And, some of those experiences have had a meaning as I've gone into this different world. And there's still many experiences, which I'm sure will have a meaning at some point, sort of further down the line.
Very nice. Very nice. That's a really good attitude. And I think to our listeners, if you have launched a product and it hasn't worked out, or, things did not go as planned, you are just getting started on building that resume of skills. And every very successful entrepreneur that I know has a long list. We call them failures, but they're really not. They're just experiences that you go through, that you learn some great lessons. And I am grateful for some of my early business failures. I have a handful of them. And I've learned from those, and it's great. So you had mentioned something in your answer when we were starting out about problems. Like when you go in and buy a business, there are problems that need fixed. And I'm going to make an analogy here. I got involved in investing in residential real estate, and I'm always looking for a deal. And one problem that I like is vinyl siding that's moldy, because it looks horrible, but you power wash it and one day it looks brand new. So I like that problem. That's a problem I go out and try to find. Problems I don't like are leaky foundation, because it's super expensive to fix and it just is kind of a nightmare. And so when you're looking at acquisitions, what type of problems do you like to find, and what are some deal killers?
This is such an amazing question, and I love the connection with property, because it's like the two worlds are very, very similar. The only difference is when you buy a business, you don't have bricks and mortar or moldy, mold. Well, you may do. When I first started down this path, I was looking for opportunities where I could add value. So typical opportunities would be, they're not doing any marketing. So that's an opportunity in itself. I had one acquisition that was generating around 2 million per year in revenue, and it wasn't doing any marketing. And my mindset was, if it's doing 2 million in revenue and it's not doing any marketing, what could we do with marketing? And there's definitely a place for that. But I've also matured slightly in my mindset, in the sense that if a business owner's been running their business and building their business for 20 years and they haven't quite nailed the marketing, you can still be quite comfortable and confident that they've probably tried a lot of different stuff and nothing's taken off. So it's not always as simple, unless you're a marketing genius or marketing whiz and you've got a very strong background in this. It's not always as simple as we just put some marketing on. So those type of opportunities where you can add stuff, so add marketing, add sales, that was where I started, but I don't look for those now. Now I'm looking for things I can take away. So it's more deductive. So I'm looking at businesses and I'm like, what can I take away from this to make the business perform better? Sometimes sometimes it could simply be there's wrong people in the wrong seat, which is very common in small businesses. I'm yet to meet a small business that doesn't have some form of family member, friend, some connection to the business owner in it. And very often they're the people who really shouldn't be in the business. I mean, same with finances as well. Like a lot of small business owners run a lot of their lifestyle through the business, and you take the small business owner out and all of a sudden all of those lifestyle costs go as well. So I'm looking for things where I can take away, because the value added tends to be far more like far greater in many cases, but also it's a lot simpler to execute. Going back to sort of the building value, like every business has potential, and every seller will tell you that their business has so much potential. But as entrepreneurs, we know better than anyone, it's bringing that potential to life. That's the hard bit. And so, yeah, I tend to look for deductive problems now rather than stuff where I have to like really put in a lot of resource and work hard to build.
Very nice. Very nice.
This next question here it's kind of interesting, and I know the audience is going to be excited to hear the answer to this. So, how do you buy a business with no money, Adrian?
That's the money question, right?
All right.
I want to start by defining a no money down deal, because the common thought that a lot of people have, myself included when I first started with this, is that you're paying $1 or £1 for the business. But it's not technically accurate. Like, you may pay $1 or £1 or euro for the business, and I've bought businesses like that before. But also you can do a no money down deal where you're paying hundreds of thousands for the business, maybe even more than that. And I've done many of those as well. A no money down deal fundamentally means that you're not putting any of your own money in on day one. Like, you're looking to structure things in a way so that the business can technically self-finance itself. And when you can get quite creative with those structures, it does become very exciting. But how do you agree those? Well, it ultimately comes down to your relationship with the sellers and understanding at a very deep level, why are they looking to sell? Why are they looking to sell to you? Why are they speaking to you now? You see, very often, and this is particularly the case with retirement sales, it's not about the money. Like, the money, of course, is important, but a lot of these good businesses, like the owners of those companies, they've already put their children through, they've already paid for their education, they've already paid their mortgage off, they've already got a lot of the stuff that they need from a material aspect. But normally there's something else just as important, if not more important, going on in their life. So they could have had a sudden health scare, and there could have been a sudden passing of a friend or a family member. There could be a number of other reasons, and they're quite sort of varied, really. To give you an example, the last acquisition I done, the owners were in their early 50s, but they had a close friend who passed away, and they just realised that they were far too young to retire, but they'd spent 20 years in this particular sector, and that if they wanted to do something else, now was the time to make a change, a career change, because they still had a good 10-year runway to do something new, and that was their driving motivation. So if you want to get these no money down structures, you ultimately have to understand what's driving it from their side. And when you truly get it and they know that you get it, you're then in a position to start proposing a structure that is genuinely going to work for them and is genuinely going to work for you. And you know when you've got it, because they are just as excited, if not more excited than you are about the deal. And it's kind of amazing when it happens, because it's like a marriage almost, like it's coming together. Perfectly possible to do these, and there's so many businesses out there to buy. Yeah, it's quite astounding, really.
I love that you use the analogy of marriage, because I think that when you're talking about partnerships or purchasing a business, there's the dating, there's the engagement, and then there's the marriage when it's signed. And so if we were to talk about your process of sourcing deals, I kind of would view it as a funnel, right? At the top of the funnel, you're speed dating, you're seeing what you like, what you don't like. And then there's a middle part of the funnel where you see who's my long-term relationship with. And so can you walk us through that funnel that would get you to a marriage with somebody open to a seller finance deal or a no money down deal?
Yeah, I love the analogy again. So deal sourcing is one of the main pain points in this. There's two main pain points, which is deal sourcing and valuation, because the seller of a business, their valuation is often very different to the buyers, and there's many different reasons for that. But yes, so you start with sourcing. So from a dating perspective, you've got your best shirt on and you're heading out into the market, and you're starting to like approach people, and you're starting to let them know that, hey, I'm looking for opportunities. I don't, I'm trying to say this in my way, but I'm open to opportunities. Do you want to have a chat? Shall we get a drink? And so you start like that. And when you very first start in this field, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like you're approaching people, and that's just kind of how it is, I guess. As you start to get a bit more known and people know that you're looking for opportunities, you tend to find them coming to you. So, and it does change quite quickly, but first of all, it's going out and letting people know that you're looking for these type of opportunities. And I often say that you probably have your first deal already within your phone book. It will probably be in your network, either a direct contact or a contact of a contact. So like a second degree connection on LinkedIn, for example. And that's an important component, because the next stage of the process is trust and building a relationship with these people. Like, they're not going to sell you their business if they don't like you, and they're especially not going to sell you their business on a no money down structure if they don't trust you. It is why the first deal often comes from somewhere within your network. But at this stage, like, you're going out for dinners, you're going out to the cinema, you're building that trust, you're starting to share openly on both sides about where are they at, where are you at, what are you looking for, is this aligned, is this not aligned? And that stage can take a while. It can take, I've got conversations that I started 4 years ago that I still am keeping on, but also I've had a lot of conversations and deals I've done where it's happened in a matter of like 3 or 4 months. So you move through that stage, so you're starting to get to know the motivations, and this is the point where you're starting to identify the business, or maybe even businesses, that you really like, and you see a vision for it, and you like the owners, or you like where it can go, and you see how you can add value. And that's a stage where you start to get down on one knee and start to talk about, what you want this future to look like, and, sort of going into that. And then you sign the paperwork, like you get married and you sign the wedding papers, and it's a great day. And very similar again, you then go into your honeymoon period. So the first, some 90 days of owning a business that you've acquired, particularly on the no money down structure, really is like a honeymoon. Like, you're just grinning from ear to ear, got these gorgeous smiles, and so excited. And then, not in all cases, but in some cases, the reality starts to dawn, and you realise, oh, I've got to put some work into this, and I've got to make changes myself, and I've got to do things in order to ensure that this works. So it really is like a marriage.
I really like that. And one thing I want to point out to our listeners is, at no point is all about communication. Like, there's no tactics or tricks, or I'm going to pull. It is communication and understanding what the other person wants. And man, if that's not finding a life partner, I don't know what is. I got one more question. I'm going to kick it over to Ken. When you're in the speed dating, do you find better success rate with brokered deals or off-market deals?
Off market every time. So in the UK in particular, brokers are not looked very favorably upon. Very much one of those people. There's a couple of very, very large brokerage companies here, and they are public companies. And when you read their annual reports, you can see that 90% of their revenue is coming from charging the sellers a marketing fee to list their business for sale. And they actually sell very few businesses. Like, they tend to be a major blocker. And the main reason, I've touched on it earlier, but it tends to come down to valuation. You see, brokers will, particularly if they're sort of competing for the same seller they want to work with, they will tend to fling around valuations that, I've seen valuations which are based on numbers, which you go and look on the company's house numbers, and they're completely different sets of numbers. It can be quite cowboy. So broker-based deals tends to add quite a few more barriers, and they're very, very hard to overcome. And it's so disheartening and heartbreaking in many ways, because I really feel for the sellers. Like, this is their exit. This is something they've been putting 20, 25, 30 years into. And at the very last sort of 100 yards of it, like, they are not getting the service that I feel they should. Off-market deals is, I'll define it. They're deals which they're not like listed for sale on like a national website or anything like that. Because they're not, you tend to be able to build a relationship much more sort of fluidly, I guess is the word. So you can build relationships with them, but it's not to say that the sellers aren't supported. So it's not just you and them. They still have professional advisors around them, but because it's not listed on the market, you're able to just be a lot more open in communications and how you're going to go about making this happen for both of you.
Adrian, you mentioned earlier, getting into the business and putting in some work. And so this next question is kind of in that phase is, what are some steps that an entrepreneur can take if they do decide to buy a turnaround business? And can you explain what a turnaround business is?
Yeah, absolutely. So every business, regardless of its size, will have some level of distress to it. Like, there's no such thing as a business without any problems. Like, there will be some form of problem. Now, some of the businesses will have quite good problems, but they're problems nonetheless. And some businesses will have quite bad problems. And those businesses with bad problems tend to be more distressed. So they're highly distressed, from distress to highly distressed. Those businesses need more than like a lick of paint on the house. They need a real turnaround. So that's where turnarounds tend to come into play. And I've done a few turnarounds. They are hard work. There's no question about that. But if you do it right, the value that you get as the new owner can be quite significant. With any business, regardless of whether it's a turnaround or not, my first steps of going in, so we've signed the paperwork. I've already laid out part of due diligence. I've got a lot of information, so I kind of know where I need to focus. But the generic steps I take is first to take control of finances and to get some proper financial reporting in place. It is scary how many businesses I've looked at, how many business owners I've spoken to, where they've got millions running through their books and they're on just Excel, or they don't have reports and they can't actually tell you how much money the business made in profit last month. Like, it's really quite terrifying. So the first thing we do is get those balls rolling. So we get control of finances, but we, more importantly, start to get an accurate picture of what's going on. I tend to put that to a team of people, normally outsourced, like some outsourced bookkeepers or finance, who can start working on that. The next step, and the one I always do myself, is the team of people in the business. So pretty much always they are pretty terrified, because the world they've known, like with the owner, that owner's now at the picture, and this new guy's in. They don't know him. They don't know what he's planning or anything, and it can be pretty scary. The big difference between, say, investing in property versus investing in the business is that, again, we'll touch on it earlier, with a property, you do have bricks and mortar, but when you are buying a business, you are essentially buying contracts, like intangible things such as customer databases, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be there. But you're also getting people with the business. Now, if you've got a small business with 10 people, which actually is quite a sizable small business, if you've got 10 people there and 2 of those people leave, that's 20% of your workforce. And so it can have quite a big impact, and it actually represents quite a big risk here. What I do to counteract that, finances are being sorted like literally in week 1. From sort of halfway through week 1, I'm spending a lot of time with the team. I'm talking a lot about the vision, talking about where we want to go with this, what we want to do. And then I start to schedule one-to-ones with everyone, and I sit down with them. I basically just listen. Like, I want to hear everything they have to say. I want to hear about everything they like, everything they don't like, any problems or potential problems they may have with this change of ownership. And then with all of that out of the way, and once I feel that they've been really understood, sorry, a bit of a mouthful there, lay it out and say, look, this is the vision, this is where we're going, this is what's expected. Do you want to be a part of this? It helps to identify quite quickly people who are going to be team players, people who are not going to be team players, and people who are potentially going to sit on the fence and could go one of each way. And so with the finances and the people under wraps, that's probably the biggest sort of risks you have, I guess, and the biggest areas you want to focus on.
So sticking with our marriage analogy, employees are a lot like in-laws. They're going to get married. They're going to be a part of your life. Unfortunately, you can't fire an in-law. But talking about like post-acquisition, have you found, like, do you prefer to go in and take 100% stake, replace the owner in 90 days? Or do you like to take a majority stake or a minority stake and keep that owner in place? What have you found works a little bit better?
So I've taken 100% stake in everything that I've acquired to date, and I've done a lot of deals into the double digits in terms of the acquisitions I've done. Every single one, and I wouldn't change this. I've taken with agrees of the owner, of course. Like, they stepped out immediately. Every single one of those as well. I've put a contract in place with the owner, like a consulting-based contract, so that if any of their services are required, then they already know at the time of signing, this is their day rate, this is what they're going to be paid, like this is the type of things that they may be called upon. There's no guarantee that they will, but I always put that into place, because you can't ignore the fact that if they've been building this business for 20 years, like, regardless of how good the handover is, there's going to be so much knowledge that they're just not going to be able to hand over, and you're not even going to think about asking it. It's only when a problem comes up 6 months down the line, and you could spend a week figuring it out, or you could jump on the phone with the previous owner who could tell you in 5 minutes, oh yeah, this is the backstory, you want to do this. But I always try to have the owner step away immediately, primarily because of the team of employees who are staying there. If the owner's still in the picture, then they will, like, it's human nature, they will naturally gravitate to them, and it does make the handover and the transition harder. And I've certainly seen that with some peers of mine who've been in that situation. With regards to like the percentage, so I have always taken 100%. We're at a scale now where that's less important to me. I think every entrepreneur goes through various sort of milestones, and one of those milestones is where you realize you don't need to own 100% of the pie. In fact, it could actually be far smarter and less riskier to have a smaller piece of that pie, regardless of whether it's majority or not. But your chances of that actually materializing into something significant is so much greater. That I would definitely, and have with like conversations we have recently, be a lot more flexible on. But in terms of the owner stepping aside, I've not seen many scenarios where that's worked well.
I'm loving this conversation, by the way. The proposal, like when you get down on one knee, and I'll play this out. I'm a 60-year-old business owner. I want to sell it to you for $1 million, and my kids don't want to be a part of it, and I want it to be in good hands. Like, what does that look like? How do you highlight benefits that makes it seem appealing to them?
It's all in the lead up. So you're not just going down on one knee out of the blue. You're dropping hints along the way of, oh, do you like that ring? And, oh, I bet that's a nice place for honeymoon. And should we go like have a look at some like wedding dresses, etc. It's very much a natural process. So, like, for example, you could, in a conversation where they say, you know what, we are planning to go on holiday in 6 months' time, and I really want to have this business sold before then. And, I've responded in a way saying, look, we could make that happen, but in order for that to happen, we're going to have something like this. This is what it's going to need to look like. And so you're just building that up so that when you do start to formalize what that deal looks like, it's not coming as some big surprise. If anything, they're pretending to be surprised because they already know what ring they're going to get and where they're going on honeymoon and who's going to make their dress. So I just the other side of that, because in the earlier days, I didn't do that. I would build loads of like rapport and connection with the owner. We'd go for everything, and then I'd put down this or suggest this no money deal structure, and they would be completely insulted by the fact that I've put down this deal. There was no lead up to it. It was, I think from their perspective, they felt a little bait and switch, which is not, nothing. You're not doing that intentionally. Yeah, it's all in the lead up.
Yeah, I like that analogy. That resonates. So, Adrian, now this is for the listeners that are, maybe they've heard about acquisition entrepreneurship, or they've heard about buying businesses. So there's always risk with buying a business. With anything you do in life, there's a risk, right? A risk tolerance. And so this is kind of a two-part question. One, can you share some of the verticals or spaces that your acquisitions have been in? And then can you share some of the risks that are associated with that, so the listeners can kind of tie those together with whatever business maybe they're interested in purchasing purchasing a business, what risks should they be aware of?
Absolutely. So some of the verticals I've acquired in the franchise sector, and even today I own two national franchise networks in the UK, and they actually got franchisees abroad, but they're primarily based in the UK. Consultancy, construction, and childcare, which is where I've built our children's education group. In terms of the risks, so there are a few different areas here, and I really don't want anyone to be misled here. I will be very clear. There are risks, and it's why you need to, like, if you're thinking of doing something like this, or you like the sound of doing something like this, you need to get educated at the beginning, at least. Like, you need to understand where to look for these risks, and more importantly, how to protect yourself from them. So you've got financial risks. So you've got wrongly valuing businesses, not doing proper financial due diligence, or not fully understanding the numbers, which is very common for entrepreneurs because many of us are not financial accountants or come from a financial background, and that's okay. You can still make this work, but you need to cover yourself there. You've got the people risks, so the HR. So you've got the risks of people leaving the business. You've got the risks that are inherent with being an employer. So my last acquisition, I had one of the employees stealing a substantial amount of money from the company, and he had been for a long time. But the previous owner never done anything. You've got many other people-related sort of risks in the construction. We had health and safety risks related to people who, quite frankly, were just being reckless. And then you've got the legal risks as well. So if you don't cover your back from a legal perspective, then it does leave the door open for potential comeback there. And all of these risks, they all actually funnel back to the no money down structure, and why it's not just about trying to not put in any of your own money. Like, I've come to believe now from experiences, and I've had some real train wrecks here. I've had some success, but also some train wrecks as well. I've come to realize that no money down structure is so important in so many ways, because you structure the deal so that if any of these problems or these real like nasties come up, then you are protected and you've got mechanisms within the deal so that you're not paying for them. And just to give you a very quick example here, because it's so important, my last acquisition, it was a no money down deal structure. The actual valuation that we agreed was several £100,000, but I knew there were problems in their business, and the red flags really went up when we were asking questions during due diligence, and the owners couldn't give us the answers. Not that they didn't want to, but they physically couldn't. They hadn't arranged their information, and so I still want to do the deal. So I went into that deal knowing that there were problems, but I didn't know exactly where they were. And in the first 3 months of ownership, we had £100,000 worth of problems come up, like £100,000 worth of bills that needed paying to put these problems to bed. But the deal was structured in such a way so that I wasn't paying for that. That was actually coming off of the seller's deferred consideration. And so it's little things like this, well, they seem little, but they can actually have quite a big impact when you go into this and you're starting to talk, fairly significant numbers.
Yeah, no, that's thanks for the detailed response. And one follow up on that, I guess, if you buy a business and someone is stealing money from the business, I guess it's kind of a bonus for the buyer, because it's not, that money is not in due diligence where it's not there. So you basically uncovered bonus. I mean, it sounds like a bad thing, but if devil's advocate here, that'd be a good thing, right?
Yes, I'll put some numbers to this to highlight your point, because it is a great point. So that particular employee, I certainly won't say any names. His annual salary was $40,000 per year. A couple of benefits he had on top of that, and with some of the calculations I did about what was actually going, it actually works out that he was taking home just over 6 figures a year from the business in various guises. But his official salary was $40,000, so it was a kicker. And it was a really awful experience to go through. But to your point, that was 6 figures coming back into the business. And that's a prime example of deductive value of a deductive sort of problem that you can sort of work with.
Yeah, that you came in and you did your hard work and you uncovered that, and then that added value to the business. How bad it was, but it still added value to the business. So
as you were going through the risks, you had said you need to educate yourself, and we were to put together a acquisition entrepreneur boot camp. Obviously, step number 1 is check out Adrian Knight's. I know a lot about this stuff, but in terms of like reading list or podcasts, if somebody was wanting to make an acquisition in the next 6 months and wanted to educate educate themselves and try to hedge the risks, as many risks as possible, what would be on that reading list or content or whatever?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The first thing I want to say here, and this is slightly like contradicting myself, you don't learn to buy a business through education, but application. That's how you learn to do this. Like, it's through the application where the real learnings come. But that doesn't mean you go in and start with no education. You still need a foundation. A lot of the different training providers out there across the US, across the UK, etc., a lot of that tends to be like more of a knowledge dump and off you go type thing. And you kind of want balance between the two. Like, you want the knowledge, but you really want someone along your side who's helping to guide you. And I was very fortunate in my early days where I just built connections with the right people who assisted me with those earlier deals. So that's just something to keep in mind there. In terms of reading lists, it's very hard to say. I'm probably not going to be very useful here or add much value, because there's a lot out there about how to buy a business. A lot of it is of varying sort of like quality. What I'd really say is you need to look into like who's actually writing this and what they've done. What I read and what I continue to read is I like to read about the entrepreneurs who've used this skill set to build quite sizable businesses or to do quite big things. And in the UK, we have a program called Dragon's Den, which has a lot of, and the US equivalent actually is Shark Tank. And so reading the stories of those investors, you tend to see the acquisitions and the selling of businesses is quite a common theme in their background. And a lot of them actually made their money from selling companies, but they built their companies through quite a size by acquiring. Like, it's really interesting when you start to look for this stuff. So I would definitely recommend checking out that type of material. Yeah, and sort of going from there.
Awesome. I'm so glad you gave that answer, because I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank. I've seen every single episode on all seasons, and I didn't know Dragon's Den existed. And so now that is going to go on my list of things. So hopefully I can get access to that here in the US. So last question for me, Adrian. This question is for Adrian, the visionary. What does acquisition entrepreneurship look like in the next 1 to 3 years? Is it going to stay the same? Is it going to get better, worse? What do you think?
I genuinely believe that 2020s are going to be the golden years for small business acquisitions. Like, I truly believe that. And the reason why, and this may or may not be sort of new news, but there is a whole generation, like the baby boomer generation, that is retiring. And for the first time in history, the generation after them, it's actually smaller than the baby boomer generation. So already there's more baby boomers and more businesses to sell than there are buyers. And then, sorry, just to clarify there, a lot of the good small businesses are owned by baby boomers. So you've got immediately out of the gate more supply than there is demand. And that's going to continue over this decade. The next thing as well is, from a buying perspective, there are a number of people who I think have started to switch on to like the significant opportunities here and the significant growth that can be experienced, like and at speed as well. I mean, I built my children's education group to a multi-million revenue in 24 months. Like, it is fast when you get this skill set. But also there's a lot of people out there who are slightly diluting the market. I think they, like from a buying perspective, there's a lot of people out there who, again, may have done a training course for a weekend. 2 years down the line, they still haven't bought a business, but they're diluting messages to sellers. So from a buyer's perspective, if you're going out with the right intention, and especially if you already have a business, like, I think the opportunities are vast, because if you've already got a business in that scenario, well, you're a proven operator, you're a proven business owner, and by buying another, there's a very natural story that the sellers of these businesses are going to see that be like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity over this decade. I think there's a huge amount of supply, and I think that with a lot of the people who are trying to handle this, they're not making it work, which in turn makes the people who know how to make this work, like, there's even more sort of opportunity. You've got less competition.
I think, why don't we get into the fire round? I'm afraid that I could stay on this podcast for 5 minutes. I just want to be respectful of Adrian's time. So yeah, well, let's get into the fire round.
All right. So Adrian, all the guests we have on the show, we run them through the ringer and what's called fire round. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
What is your favorite book?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Nice. I like that one. What are your hobbies?
Going and doing stupid stuff with sports in either really hot or really cold places. So,
Awesome. Something challenging. Right.
yeah,
What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
being told what to do.
Excellent. Last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Persistence.
Excellent answer.
Absolutely. Adrian, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast. If people are interested in getting in touch with you or following your content, what would be the best way?
Yep. So I'm very active on social media, particularly Instagram. I post on there several times a day, and my handle is Adrian J Knight with a K. And you can also go to my website, which is adrianknight.co.uk.
Awesome. And we're going to post links to both of those in the show notes. Adrian, thank you so much for your time today and looking forward to staying in touch.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this and the analogies as well.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this video. If you got some value out of this, would you please hit the like and subscribe button? This is a free way to support the show, and it really helps us build our audience.